G'day ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Draw with Jazza. I'm Jazza and this is an artist interview, and I thought I'd preface it with a bit of an intro just because this one in particular is very special to me. When I was 12 years old and started to find my passion for art, I started collecting books from a certain author by the name of Christopher Hart. I very quickly became obsessed with his books, and for years of my adolescence I went through every bookshop I found and looked for his books. I still have all of his books that I collected when I was a kid, but the point is he was one of the greatest artistic influences in my developing stage of creativity. Anyway, with that sentimentality out of the way, I just wanted to say one final thank you to Christopher Hart for accepting the invitation to do this interview with me. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoy my interview with Christopher Hart. G'day ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Draw with Jazza. My name's Jazza and today we have an artist interview with the very talented Christopher Hart. He is an author with over 50 books published. He's sold over 3.5 million copies, which have been translated into 20 different languages. He's had the top selling art book in the US for over a year continuously, and in addition the top 1, 2 and 3 art books in the country simultaneously. He's known for his entertaining styles and instruction methods, and here with us today he is Christopher Hart. Thank you very much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for asking me. I'm delighted to be able to talk with you today.
So we're just going to jump straight into it and talk about you and where you come from and how you came to be such a great success in what you do. Could you kind of talk us through your early stages, where you've lived and how you've grown to just sort of a summary as to the process to becoming the author?
Sure. Well, actually, I can talk about things that a lot of, I teach a lot of people who are in their teens and tweens and adults. So, they're very connected to how they started it as well. So maybe they'll relate to this. I had trouble reading as a kid. I had a learning problem, and I really couldn't read very well for a long time. So I found out I could draw, and so I could create this whole world and kind of say what I wanted to say through my drawings, which a lot of people do. A lot of people who become artists feel the same way. Yeah. And so I drew all the time. I drew on everything. I didn't get in trouble that much, but I drew on everything, and. We moved a lot when I was a kid. As a matter of fact, at one point we moved 8 times in 4 years, which is tough for a kid. Yeah, but the thing that was a constant in my life was the art, was the drawing. So, and it wasn't until I was 12 years old that I started to latch on to cartooning. I think a lot of people, a lot of my readers, they have something that like clicks with them. Maybe it's manga, maybe it's fantasy art, maybe it's comics. Yep. And then they kind of narrow down their focus and really get into it, go deeper into that. And so for me, that was cartoons. That was animation. I just thought Disney was the greatest thing in the history of the world. Anytime a Disney movie came on, it was like Christmas time to me, Do
you have any favorite shows or movies that you remember really fondly?
Well, all the Disney classics, Pinocchio, Fantasia, Sleeping Beauty, groundbreaking graphic cartoon, and also, I love the Tex Avery stuff, that wild and wacky stuff. Bad News Blackie, King Size Canary. These are all old classics. But then, I enjoy all the new stuff coming up. The Adventure Time. I love Fairly Odd Parents, and all this kooky, crazy stuff. I think that we're in a new golden age of animation. Yeah. Television animation. Movie animation is also tremendous. I mean, it's my favorite recent movie was. Well, I shouldn't say. I'm not going to say my favorite because that's going to say which ones I don't like. But I've seen a lot of stuff that's come out, and I think that all the stories are particularly good. The Croods, the Hotel, the Transylvanias, all the different sort of genres out there. Yeah. Despicable Me, all that stuff. I'm a fan. I'm not just an artist. I'm a fan of that stuff. I'm a fan of other people coming up and their talent too. I try to be encouraging. I had mentors when I was a kid. I was lucky I was in LA, and I used to go down to the Cartoonist Union. I wasn't a member, but if you could, at 16, you could go take these life drawing classes. Anybody could go. So we'd go to North Hollywood and take these life drawing classes with a buddy of mine, an animation buddy of mine, and we're still friends. So I could find the professionals because I was in LA. Yeah. A lot of people now, they're from all parts of the world, all parts of the country, but like if someone might be in Wisconsin, they might not know anybody in publishing. Yeah. So through my Facebook and my other areas, my YouTube, I try to be accessible and be that contact for other people.
Like joining us here today. It's great.
Oh, yes. Well, sure. It's my pleasure, my privilege.
So when artists are young, we tend to have memories of when we started tinkering around and creating projects and all these things. And I have a few myself. What were some of your earliest projects and memories that you have as an artistic kid?
Which ones did you do? I'll see if I have the same thing.
Okay, well, I used to get paper. See, we didn't have much access to technical stuff, or animation wasn't a big deal where I grew up in the country in Australia. But I got reams of paper, and I would animate one by one, and with a camera, just take photos of all these things.
Right.
And
8mm camera, clicking off one frame at a time.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I do the same thing. I had all these films I was going to make, but you don't know how big a film is. So
Yeah.
I would get like 300 pages into it and think, I've only got like 6 seconds of animation. So I tinkered with a lot of ideas for animated movies when I was a kid. And then I would start in character design, really. I would just try to get a character, all different poses. I was creating model sheets at a fairly young age. And in a way, that's what I am, besides how to draw author. I'm a character designer, because all my books have all different characters. I don't repeat the character from one book to another. Every page is a new character. So there are two different types of cartoonists, in my opinion. One is somebody who creates a project, a property, whether it's a Hello Kitty or it's Dilbert, or it's a property. It's something, and they continue to draw that same character over and over again in different situations, exploring it, developing it. And then there are people like me who don't want to stay with just one thing. I want to create something, then I want to create something new, then I want to create something new. And those people generally go on to try to create like a television show or movies or books or graphic novels, because they can always be introducing new characters and new stories.
You're a very experienced artist, in particular with Western art and comic and animation, all that stuff. And yet you do a lot of books on anime and manga. Do you find there's something of a process to be able to go between them, or to, because they're quite different and they must be different approaches. How do you find your experience with that?
Yeah, they are, and they have different sensibilities, and you have to respect each of them. I think it's trying not to impose preconceived notions of cartoons onto manga and think, well, it's all the same stuff. It's just a little different style. Yes, it's a very different style. It's not all the same stuff, and it's like there's a sweet spot with each of them. Is when you really feel you hit a groove, and you're in a really strong and appealing area. Then you stick with that. You don't try to impose other things. Like, for instance, on a book on drawing cartoons, I might do something with the line of action. I might do stuff with a certain animated techniques like drag and flow and squash and stretch. There's not as much of that in manga. So instead of that, I might concentrate on character design and style, shadow, mood. It's so I let the genre dictate the book rather than I try to put something into it just because it might be a neat technique or principle.
With your books, you have several on anatomy, in particular, on simplified anatomy for the learning artist. And yet you demonstrate a very comprehensive understanding of these things and the names and positioning. What was your process in learning and understanding that? Because that's a very different sort of thing which you take in and apply to art, which many artists go through.
Well, I supplemented my education after I graduated. I went to the Silver-Minded School of Art. I went to the Pear School of Art and doing life drawing, each one. And I was lucky enough to have a teacher who was, one of them, who worked in a doctor's office. And he became incredibly adept with anatomy. And so I sort of, got my interest off of, how to blending anatomy and figure drawing from that. But if you saw my office, you'd see, the studio. And on this side of the studio, I've got skeletal models, muscular models, I've got skulls, I've got, I've got all sorts of reference material, and it's really studying it. So, it takes really years of looking like this. So you're looking at different charts, diagrams, and photographs, and trying to, it's not that easy at first, but then it starts to come together. Drawing is like language. It's like you try, and all of a sudden you're understanding.
Yeah.
You can speak the language.
That's a
So
really good way of putting it. Yeah.
most people don't stick with it long enough to get past that point. I hope that my books do that. They keep you involved till you get to that point where you really are, you're on a roll. You know, you can speak the language of drawing.
Well, they were a massive help in my developing phase in doing that, so I can do nothing but, commend that.
Which one do you like, for instance? Was there a
Well,
particular
my
one?
favorite was this one. I've got my collection here by my side. Let me just bring them up. Ugh. For those who don't know, I used to collect these through my childhood, so I have about 7 or 8. But my
Wow.
two favorites were Drawing Cutting Edge Comics. This was my number one favorite. I went through this all the time. And then there's Drawing Cutting Edge Anatomy. So both of those things, because I tend to gravitate to that comic sort of style mostly. And I love
That's
cartooning as
interesting.
well.
When I came up with the Cutting Edge Comics, there had been a book like that. There was a Marvel book on how to draw. But what happened is that there were books on, technique on how to draw comic book characters, and they kept it all basic so that you could do it. So they all end up looking sort of like 1960s comic book characters.
Yeah.
And I thought, every time I went to a comic book store, I mean, this stuff was edgy. It was it was sleek. It was so different. And I thought, this is what they don't want to go through a whole book so they can draw stuff that looks a little corny. They want to go through a book and at the end draw stuff that looks like what they see in the comic book store.
Yeah.
Like, as you see, there's some extreme things there. So in every chapter, but after you go through the basics, you'll learn how to tweak it. And one of the things I think I've done, which I'm most proud of, is that if you any of the viewers see this, you know that in art school there's a tendency for instructors to look down on style. They think, we'll teach you the basics. Anyone can do style. So we'll teach you the anatomy, the figure drawing, and if you like that manga stuff, do that yourself, But these teachers who are very, very good at figure drawing couldn't draw a manga drawing if they had a gun to their head. Style is art. I mean, you can't tell me these guys who do the wonderful comic book characters, the kind that you draw, are terrific artists. That there's a lot of technique that goes into style. And so before Cutting Edge Comics, there really weren't books that focused on the style, because that was looked down upon. And since this time, there's been, and I've continued to follow that, and in more books like the retro style of cartooning and Cartoon Cool, and a lot of other authors have come in with wonderful books also, who are showing how to do stylistic techniques to enhance the basics. So you don't just end up at the end of a book just drawing something that looks very, very basic.
Yeah. I mean, really, that's the motive for a lot of budding artists, is they just want to make the cool stuff that they see. And that was the motivation for me with these books, why I got so into them, because I wanted to make the cool stuff that I saw, and I thought that was a help with that. So what's some of the work that you're most proud of as an author?
It's not always the most popular book, but the book I think is my best art is Drawing Dragons and Those Who Hunt Them. It's a really cool book, and there's even a gatefold, 2 gatefolds in that. And what a gatefold is when you open the book, it folds out, a couple times, so you can see a large panorama, a fantasy panorama of a dragon attacking a knight and that sort of stuff. I think some of my best work is also Drawing Fairies and A Believer's Guide. Drawing Fairies, A Believer's Guide. My fantasy art is not so cartoony. It's much more like a whole world. There's always a story involved, and the pictures show a story, they show mood, they show a certain joy and whimsy that people sink into. And I've gotten fan letters about that, that they love those characters. So I think the fantasy realm is probably is closest to my heart. I don't do that much of it, but when I do, it's like it really comes from the gut.
What would you say has been your greatest artistic influence through your creative learning?
I have to say that it changes. It continues to shift and continues to evolve, and that's why and that has to, if you draw in different styles, it can't just be one thing. Because although Disney was the most important thing to me in my life when I was younger, if that was still the case, I could not have been moved on to pursuing manga and pursuing retro cartoons and the figure drawing that I do. So I don't follow so much people as I follow there's certain stylistic trends that I enjoy, a whole panorama of different trends, and whether it's in animated movies or television or comics or graphic novels. Things go in a certain area, and I find it very interesting when there are like departures, like when manga when they mix genres.
Yep.
It's like that's interesting. They would put this with that. They would put a chibi with a vampire and this and that.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Okay, so now I'm going to just channel the interview in a bit of a direction for the viewers, because you're a very experienced educator and we are all your humble students. So the first thing I want to ask is something I get asked a lot, and it's something I also would like to ask. Myself, among many others, artists have difficulty at times with specific things. Sometimes I get contacted by people who have trouble drawing hands or feet. I personally have trouble drawing women at times, and other people have the same problem. Or in reverse, some people I know have trouble drawing men. So what advice do you give to artists who have those specific difficulties?
Well, I used to have trouble when I was a teenager drawing women. It didn't look the way I wanted it to look, and I think I draw women all the time, not cartoon women, other types of styles, and some of the most expressive and stylish drawings I do. Matter of fact, I'm going to make a plug right here, which is here's a new book that's coming out at the end of November, Fashion Design Studio, it's all about women and fashion and figure drawing and models. I think the most important thing when you draw women is to decide what style you're going for. Are you doing kind of a little wacky, kind of retro style? Mm-hmm. Are you doing something that is like a fashion or a manga? Or are you doing, is a woman going to be kind of a fun, cheerful high school girl? Is she going to be kind of a very stylish girl with an evil flair? Because you have the ability with female characters, because of the wonderful hairstyles and the makeup that you can use for the eyelashes, to be a little extreme. I mean, so unlike guys, where you just have the eyes and the eyebrows, where you could have a retro lady with the straight eyelashes, radiating all around the eyeballs, that funny look. Or you could have a very sultry type of look with with a sort of curving eyelids. So I think you have to choose, because what would happen to me, and maybe happens to you, is it kind of mixes. You might do the eyes very, very carefully, make them very feminine eyes, and then the nose and the mouth are kind of cartoony, and the body is a little. It's got to all be homogeneous in according to the style.
So finding and discovering the accentuated features and all of that.
Yeah, just decide what direction it's going in. Mm-hmm. Don't just draw a woman. Find out what direction it's going in and enhance that style. Be true to the style, and it should then come together. It should the style will lead you in the right direction. I mean, there's certain conventions in different styles, and certain ways these cartoons look, and you can deviate from that, but it gives you a basis. A style has conventions, has a look, so where you're going,
Yeah.
So that's why it's good to have one in mind, I think.
That's great.
It's probably too long an answer.
No, that's fine. So what would you say? Now, you probably get this all the time, but if you had to summarize a piece of advice for artists to keep in mind, regardless of style or genre or medium, what would that be?
I think a couple of things. One is practice, but consistency is more important than the amount of time. I think you'll improve more if you draw for an hour a day, every day or every other day, than if you do for 12 hours twice a week. Mm-hmm. So consistency, and also if you get stuck at artist block, instead of just giving up, switch to something else. Keep the creative flow going, but switch to a different project. Then come back to what you're doing a day or two later with more perspective. You're still in a creative mode. You haven't just laid off for 2 weeks in frustration. You'll find that you can attack it from a new angle.
Yeah, that's a really great piece of advice. And I was going to ask you about overcoming the creative slump. So, and that's a different sort of take on it, because we hear quite a lot. And I've been guilty of saying from time to time that it's good to kind of separate yourself a bit from the thing that's blocking you. But you're saying that not just that, but go to a different creative thing, project, medium, whatever, but keep the juices flowing.
Yeah, the reason is because, if you're having trouble working on one thing, say you're working on a figure drawing, but you enjoy doing superheroes the way you do.
Yeah.
If you go back to some superhero characters that are you're familiar with, you get back into that groove of I know how to do this. So when you come back to your original drawing, you can sometimes say, "Oh, I get what I was doing wrong."
Yeah.
It was just, which I hate because it usually means I have to draw the whole thing over again. But we all have that. We all go through that stuff.
A strangely common sort of difficulty that some artists have is to do with spatial reasoning, which is more about a part of the brain necessarily than, a technique or whatnot. Knowing how shapes work in 3 dimensions and then conveying that in 2 dimensions. So what are the best things that artists can do to develop that part of our brain and understanding?
I think you just said it. It's very simple. Understanding that is one of the first things you taught us in art school is that you're trying to represent 3 dimensions with a 2-dimensional picture. So you're really suggesting something that you can't really draw. You can't really draw around this because you have 2 dimensions. But if you know that you're trying to make this look 3-dimensional, there are certain things you can do. For instance, one quick thing is anytime there's a change of plane, the angle of something, a side of something versus another side, the tone, the lightness, the shadow shifts a little bit. And so that's one thing. There are different techniques for doing that, and there are sometimes in the construction of the figures. Using certain constructions will allow you that makes sense, that you can turn from any direction, will allow you to have something that looks very round, very real. That's the problem most beginning artists have. They draw one great picture, and they say it's great, and how come I can't reproduce it in other angles? The reason is because it has no foundation. If you can't deconstruct that drawing. You can't show the construction as a mannequin. Mm-hmm. Once you can do that, you can turn it any direction you want. But there's a certain logic to it, rather than just an accidental drawing that looks good. Sometimes when I do an accidental drawing that looks good, it has to change. I hate to do that, and you would hate to do that too. But it has to change so it makes sense.
Yeah.
So so it's not a cheat. Meaning both eyes are maybe not quite centered, but the expression looks good. Well, you have to center them. You have to go and do that stuff. You have to go and change the thing that you think looks perfect because it's got to make sense.
You can't really understate the importance of construction lines, can you? Because that's something I push all the time personally, and a lot of people who might not necessarily understand much about art might be confused and see it and what are those squiggles you're drawing or whatever, but really, like you said, it's the foundation of what you're doing.
Yeah, I go back to that often, when I'm having trouble with the drawing. Obviously, I don't use the constructions all the time, but I frequently use it, especially if there's a pose that looks a little complex. I will definitely use that to make sure it's going right.
Okay, so we're just going to go into some random stuff now, a bit more about some generalities. What's your favorite color, Chris?
I don't have one, but I have some that I know that I love to use reds and yellows because it really pops. It wakes you up, Yeah. I really like purples, but I can't use them as much as I want to because they're so dark that you're either using it's such contrast against a light color, or there's no contrast against a darker color.
Yeah.
It's really what the cartoon itself calls for. But one of the toughest colors to reproduce in print is orange. I don't know why, but it's very touchy how it comes out. It happens to be one of my favorite colors to use. As you'll see in a lot of shows, there's certain cartoon combinations. Orange and lime green go together. Pink and light blue go together. There are certain combinations of cartoony colors that do that, and so I try to look for that also. Not put them side by side necessarily, but include them in the cartoon character so that somehow subconsciously you get the humor because the color is making it fun.
What is your favorite place in the world?
Oh gosh, well, I'm not going to give you probably the exact answer like location that you want, but my favorite place is in any store where I'm shopping for Christmas gifts around Christmas time for my family. I love to get them stuff during whether it's their birthdays or holidays. My favorite thing is to is to be a little bit like Santa Claus.
Yeah.
If I could have any job in the world, it would be Santa Claus, giving presents. That would be my favorite thing in the world.
So, Chris, what would you say is your all-time favorite TV show and your all-time favorite movie? If you had to say it.
No question. First of all-time favorite movie, Godfather Part 2.
Yep.
Godfather Part 2, every day. And it's unfortunate when it comes on television because no matter what I'm doing, I have to watch the rest of it. I have to. And I have to say, there may be better shows, although I think this is a terrific show. But I think my favorite show in the whole world was the original Star Trek.
Ah, yeah.
I mean, what a show.
Yeah.
What it was is, it really was a triad of personalities. You had the captain, who was the strong one, you had the logical one, and you had the emotional one, who is the doctor. You had Spock, the doctor, and the captain, and they're all basically formed a single personality at the core of this. And I think the thing that was so heroic about Star Trek was it always involved personal sacrifice. There was no show where the characters didn't have to sacrifice at great cost to do the right thing. So I actually learned a lot from it.
That's an interesting observation. I hadn't thought about that before, but you're right, yeah.
I spent a lot of time watching TV, and actually, I spent a lot of time alone as a kid. And where I learned a lot of my lessons were from great television shows, and sometimes they had these corny things like the Andy Griffith Show, which I loved. And I thought, that's how it should be.
Yeah.
So when I had a family, I thought, well, why shouldn't I do that? Why shouldn't it be comfortable like that? And so, sometimes I think TV is underrated. I mean, you're having experiences when you're watching television. So I tell people, when they want to be cartoonists, read your graphic novels, watch your animated television shows, get a lot of the work be exposed to a lot of stuff that you love. And in this over-scheduled world, when my children are growing up, one is graduated, one's now in college. They were very good students. They are very good students. But I insisted on 2 hours of television time a day.
Really?
It was 4 or 5 hours a day. I said, you got to have some TV time, and you don't have to watch the History Channel.
That's so
You can
funny.
watch anything you want. Because I know that unless you're a little bored, unless you're a little wandering, your mind's wandering a little bit, unless you daydream a little bit, you can't be creative. You cannot be overscheduled and be creative. It doesn't work that way.
Chris, if you were unable to do what you do artistically, what would you be doing instead?
I know the answer to that too, because it's something that sometimes I say, oh, that would have been so great to do.
Yep.
It would be a cosmologist. It would be working on string theory or the origins of the Big Bang. It would be all the cosmological questions. Why is there something rather than nothing?
Yep.
I find quantum mechanics seems to make sense at a gut level. I was terrible with math, but I was always good conceptually. I was a chess player, but not a mathematician. But the science of that, the concepts are so wonderful and so almost brave today, the way the scientists will think things that we just poo-pooed when I was a kid. The idea of multiple universes and things that are very seriously studied now. Yeah. It's like science fiction's becoming real science. It's like Star Trek is becoming real science.
Yeah.
So it's a fascinating, wonderful world, and that's what I would have liked to have done if I hadn't done this. But I'm happy doing this.
So what can we all look forward to in seeing things from Christopher Hart? What have you got coming out, and what are you working on?
Well, I got some stuff that's coming out soon that isn't quite listed yet on the the internet, so I can't talk about the stuff until it's got its ISBN, which is the sort of the kind of barcode for books. Yeah. But like I said, I got the fashion design book, and my other one, which came out just recently, is the manga for the beginner, Midnight Monsters, which is all the kind of Twilight influenced genre stuff, and great, cool, and seductive characters of the dark, etc. So, they're very. They got some really great art principles in them too, which I like. I don't like it to just be about style, because otherwise you're just kind of using techniques and tricks. So it's got, especially the fashion book, it's got lots of really good instruction on how to draw the figure. So if you just check Amazon under Christopher Hart Eels and you check publication date, you'll always see the newest thing coming out.
That's
It'll tell you what
fantastic.
the newest thing is.
Well, we'll make sure to have all of your links in the description. Chris Hart also has a YouTube channel, which he shows quite regularly. I'm subscribed, so I see how regularly you post videos. He gives quite regular drawing tutorials and really great lessons there. So make sure to go check that out with the link in the description, and go check out his books on Amazon, and there will be a link to his website as well. Thank you so much for joining us today, Chris Hart. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.